Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today we have an interesting unit here. This is the ThinkPad E580. So the E580 is part of the E series line, which is built out of less expensive materials. If we're talking about the more expensive equivalent, that would be the T580. And if memory serves me right, I do have a video on that, which you can see up here. Now, this particular unit appears to have some kind of, I'm going to guess, French keyboard, but this has the same military standard test, the 810G passed, that practically all ThinkPads do. The only difference is the build materials. Rather than using carbon fiber and a whole bunch of clever roll cages, we have a PCB polycarbonate base, and then our display lid is actually aluminum. So this is still a very durable machine that is worthy of carrying the ThinkPad name. It has the great keyboard, it has the track point, dedicated mouse buttons with a great click, and a click pad with a Mylar covering. This one also features the optional fingerprint reader. However, it does not feature the optional backlit keyboard. So this is a 15.6-inch display, and it came in two flavors, either a not-so-great 1366 by 768 panel or a 920 by 1080 wide view angle. CPUs came in either 7th generation Intel, which was the i3-7020U and the i3-7130U, and then the i5-7200U. There was no i7 variant in the 7th generation. All 7th generation Intel was being driven by the Intel HD 620. The 8th generation Intel, however, had an i3, an i5, and an i7 variant, and they were all driven by the UHD 620. Now, you could also get an AMD Radeon RX 552 GB dedicated GPU on those models, but in the 8th generation only. RAM was a maximum of 32 gigabytes, and that was 2 sticks of 16. I haven't read anything online saying if more was possible. I don't know if putting that much RAM into these machines was a particularly popular upgrade. And you are going to be running 2400 megahertz in the 8th gen and 2133 in the 7th gen. The whole thing is being powered by a 45 watt-hour internal battery, which if you absolutely sip the battery power and practically do nothing, you might be lucky to get 12 hours. But still, not that bad. So let's do a quick tour of some of the ports that we have. On the right-hand side, we have the Kensington lock slot. We have a full-size Ethernet port and USB 2.0, and then a micro SD card reader. Along the front, we have absolutely nothing except a gargantuanly chamfered edge there, which is still good looking at its own right. And if you have no idea what chamfering means, you need to click on this video here and learn more about that. On the left-hand side, we have a USB Type-C 3.1 Gen 2 plug next to a HDMI 1.4B, two USB 3.0 ports, and then, of course, a headphone microphone combo jack. And then on the bottom, we have really nothing to speak of. We have two downward firing, well, sort of downward firing speakers as they're on the chamfered edges, which actually probably would improve sound quality. We also have a massive bumper of a rubber strip here, which is likely to help with the cooling solution, which is located right in front of it. So since we have this thing turned over, let's go ahead and grab our screwdriver and begin to open up this unit. It's a rather trivial matter of simply removing all of the screws from the bottom of the machine. And despite this being inexpensive, the screws feel captive. So once we hear that click, we know they're spun all the way out. Now, with all of these screws spun out, the way that we're going to get on the inside is separating the top case from the keyboard. And to do that, I'm going to grab two tools, a metal pry tool and then a plastic pry tool, known as an old gift card. And we're going to start with the metal pry tool because tolerances are very thin. And once we've got it started, we're just going to switch over to the plastic and help these clips, especially in the front, let go. And they are tough. All right, plastic cover has been removed and we have gain admittance. So this is actually a pretty neat little design to see on the inside. So we do have our battery pack over here, and we do have a bay for a 2.5-inch SATA style drive. Now, from what I understand, M2 kits were available that plugged in here, so you can also see an M2 caddy sometimes in this area as well. This one, of course, has a M.2 2280 NVMe drive that has been installed. And one of the other things that you'll note is that this thing is exceptionally modular in its design for its price point. So the speakers are removable, the battery is removable. You can run up to 2 drives in this, which are both removable. You have a completely separate module for the fingerprint reader over here, although you would need the actual keyboard cover to support it, of course, if you were going to swap it in. Your board over here, which contains a variety of your ports, is a dedicated USB board located all the way over here. And then, of course, we do have our other ports along the main board as well. So not every single port is on its own board, but it is kind of nice to see that if a port over here fails, it will not impact the board over here. We do have a socketed Wi-Fi card, and I believe there's about 4 different variants that'll fit in there, even with the whitelist. And we see 2 RAM slots, both easily accessible from the top. So in terms of upgradability and serviceability, it's actually not that bad. We do see that our fan is intaking from the bottom of the machine, which we could figure from these big, heavy rubberized strips, and that it's exhausting out the back. We can also tell by looking that this heat pipe is not making a stop anywhere else, so there's probably no dedicated GPU in this unit that we can see. But by and large, ladies and gentlemen, for a machine that is several $100s less on the used market than the equivalent T580, and we'll talk more about that later, there's a fair degree of serviceability, upgradability, and value if you can get the right unit. So let's go ahead and throw the cover back on and boot it up and see what we get for some boot times. All right, with everything screwed back together and clipped back together, and it did clip back together very nicely indeed, let's go ahead and open it up and start it up and see what kind of boot time we can get. All right, so boot times are going to be pretty good. We do have, I believe, 16 gigs of RAM in there. And let's check the specs that give us that boot time. So we are looking at the Intel i5-8250U, 8 gigabytes of RAM, so nowhere near its maximum. And that's pretty good, because if we wanted to swap out that 8 gigabyte module for 2 16s, or just dump in another 8 for a total of 16, this thing is ready for action. And obviously you can see we are running Windows 11 because we do have that 8th generation Intel chip in there. And if I had to take a guess, oh, this is the 1920 by 1080 panel, so and the brightness is not super high. Let's see if we can give you a better idea what that would be maximum brightness, and it is. So it's not a very bright panel. I think it's 250 nits, and even though you do have decent viewing angles head on, from the side, as you can see, it very quickly darkens out. But again, not terrible. And that's the thing, is that a machine like this is exceptional value for the money, because on the used market you can get a E580 on eBay for about 350 to 400 Canadian dollars with decent specifications and in good shape. Now, if you want a T580 of that same era, then you're looking at starting at usually the low 500 Canadian. So you can find these machines, and if they're in good condition, they're really good value for money. I really want to stress that. And sometimes you're not looking for the thinnest and the most durable machine. You just need good guts because you know that a laptop like this is primarily going to be sitting on your desktop. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles like Thunderbolt 3, but you might not need them either. If you just need a good business machine with a large screen, a numpad, like to me, this is an excellent machine for an accountant that needs something thin, light, that's going to get all the security updates that they need, and all the bells and whistles are going to be spent in the right place with a good keyboard, although I have to admit I would like the backlit version. But again, you're going to be able to find lots of options, especially as these come off of warranties with small and medium-sized businesses that would be purchasing them. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you've learned some valuable information about just how much value you can see outside of the T series and how much serviceability exists in the ThinkPad lineup when you're not choosing the premium devices. And those premium devices very often have premium customers, and those premium customers aren't really concerned about upgradability. At any rate, if you did enjoy this content or if you found it useful, please consider doing the big four. It does help the channel out significantly. Please like the video, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so when I do release another video on a device like this that can save you a little bit of money, then you'll be the first to know about it. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.